world of single-cylinder 400 to 500cc motorcycles, you'll usually find two extremes. On one end, you have Royal Enfield's own long-stroke engines. On the other end, you have the rev-happy KTMs and the Pulsars. So citing a golden opportunity for a middle ground, Royal Enfield envisioned a roadster, something that you could nicely relax on and cruise, or when you are in the mood for some action, go all out with it. Enter the Guerrilla 450, named after a warfare technique of unexpected and sudden attacks. At first glance, the Guerrilla 450 boldly announces its intentions. It's here to challenge the status quo and attack the big players in the roadster segment, like the Triumph Speed 400 and Bajaj Domina 400. So this is a motorcycle that sort of says, okay, I can relax or be laid back whenever you want me to be, or don't for a moment think that I can't turn up the heat when you are in the mood. It can do best of both the worlds, but will it stay true to its name? Can it really make those unexpected attacks? Can it really take the rivals by a storm? That is something that we are here to find out. In Spain, braving the heat, the tapas and the siestas, to spend some time with this motorcycle and bring you this review. Stay tuned till the end. You might look at the block pattern tires on this motorcycle and wonder, did they start off with a scrambler and give up halfway? Well, the funny story is, this was more of a design team's requirement. They wanted to give this bike a more rugged appearance, something that would immediately tell you it's ready for the Indian roads. While at the same time, the bodywork wanted to maintain a bit of that Himalayan character, a bit of that charm as well. So it's a mix of both, though it is a roadster. So why isn't the Guerrilla a scrambler? The plan from day one was to let the Royal Enfield Scram 411 continue its reign. Thanks to the solid foundation and cult following, the Himalayan 411 platform has garnered worldwide. After all, the Scram 411 ticks all the boxes for an accessible scrambler. Well, it was envisioned to be a roadster right from day one. It was co-developed alongside the Himalayan 450 right from day one. It wasn't a last-minute plan. It wasn't something that was pivoted last minute to outdo the competition or something like that. They always wanted to create this niche within the already niche roadster segment. They wanted to harness the power, the capabilities of that Sherpa 450 platform, and the result is in front of you. That said, it only shares the engine and certain components with the Himalayan. Apart from that, it's an all-new motorcycle. Apart from some suspension components, peripherals, the engine, and a part of the main frame that holds it in place, the rest of the Guerrilla is practically a different motorcycle. The engine claims the best-in-class torque spread and runs a smaller rear sprocket, a 45 tooth instead of a 47 for better top speed. It also rolls on a shorter wheelbase, lower ground clearance and 17-inch wheels front and rear, a 4-degree sharper rake and a 27mm shorter trail, all of which makes the Guerrilla a much sharper handler, even with those block pattern tires. The Guerrilla 450 was designed with accessibility in mind, making it both compact and user-friendly. And if you find the Himalayan too cumbersome for city use, the Guerrilla might fit you better. Now let's talk about the ergonomics. That's going to be my seating posture. So the handlebar has been dropped lower, the foot pegs have been raised, and because of the lower height of the vehicle, it doesn't feel as top heavy as the Himalayan. The seat height is lower too, at 780mm, 45mm lower than the Himalayan standard seat, though it isn't adjustable. However, the narrow subframe and the seat ensure easy ergonomics even for shorter riders. Taller riders might find the handlebar a bit narrow, its position a bit low, and the tank not supportive enough for the knees. So as you can see, the ergonomics are very different than the Himalayan. I was talking about the handlebar. Now it's dropped by 30mm and pulled back by about 7 to 8mm. The same goes for the rider foot peg. The foot peg has been upped by about 30mm and pulled back by about 7 to 8mm, and that is what rotates the rider triangle to a more aggressive stance. In fact, it's a sportier stance than the other roadster in the lineup, which is the Hunter 350. It's also sportier than something like the Maverick 440, but on par with the Triumph Speed 400, the 400 being a little bit more aggressive than this one. The unique subframe means you can't swap panels or seats with the Himalayan, so don't even think about those DIY part swap. The Guerrilla 450 isn't burdened by a legacy, so it gets to have a little fun with its color options, just like the Hunter and the Scram. With this colorful frame and wheels on some versions, there's a hint of the Ducati Scrambler or even the Suzuki SV650 vibe in the Guerrilla. Royal Enfield say that they have done some serious fashion forecasting with this motorcycle, but honestly, I find the colors to be too gaudy even for the future. In fact, the only color that I like is actually the matte silver, which is only available on the base model, which means if you were to choose that, you don't get the TFT instrumentation, you go with the Meteor instrumentation with the Tripper navigation. If you had to go with the gaudier colors though, you have the option of the red or the yellow on the top end variants, which seems like they're trying to celebrate Spain, their recent Euro Cup victory, etc. And this yellow in particular, with all these purple accents, I think it's a shout out to the LA Lakers. While it says Guerrilla on every variant of the motorcycle, all their branding exercise for their merchandise, marketing, communication, etc. says GRR 450 or GRR 450. But honestly, there's nothing angry about the motorcycle or its design. It's compact, but yet it mimics all the elegant lines of the Himalayan quite nicely. Let's go nitpicking. There aren't too many plastics on this motorcycle, and it also makes fun of those plastic bikes, but whatever plastics exist, the quality could be a little bit better compared to the Triumph 400s at least. But it's definitely a step up from the Harley-Davidson X440. To avoid making it look like an ADV, the height of the tank has been reduced. To avoid making it look like a cruiser, the length of the tank has been reduced as well. So what they've had to do is put this little panel right here to hide the headstock. I just pray, fingers crossed, it doesn't start rattling with time. And the other bit, you have these 3 exposed bolts right here, which in my opinion looks a bit ungainly. They hide quite nicely behind the screen on the Himalayan, but here they are visible. So hopefully you should be able to put a visor or maybe a small fly screen to hide that. So that is one accessory I definitely recommend. The headlamp performance is inadequate, just like the Himalayan. And let's not forget the short side stand, which can make picking up the bike a bit of a chore for shorter riders. With all fluids topped up, the Guerrilla is only 11 kilos lighter than the Himalayan, but the shorter seating masks the weight when moving it around on the feet, and even lighter on the move thanks to excellent weight distribution and suspension tuning. It sports a smaller 11-litre tank, but Royal Enfield claims an estimated fuel economy of around 30 kilometers to a litre in eco mode, suggesting a 300-kilometer range. But I'll take that with a pinch of salt. The fuel gauge was already screaming empty at the end of our 170-kilometer ride. It was, of course, in performance mode across the winding roads of Spain and a bit of a traffic situation near Montjuic. Now, does that name ring a bell? Montjuic was once a Formula One or motorcycle endurance racing circuit. Yes, we rode the bike there. But it's full of traffic and roundabouts now. We even rode on a few highways and the pet peeve remains. The engine gets buzzy in the 90 to 100 km/h zone, so your cruising speed has to be lower or higher. The Guerrilla's handling was fine-tuned in Spain. Engineers from Bosch and Showa frequently visited to tweak the ABS and the suspension settings respectively. The bike uses a 310mm disc up front instead of a 322 on the Himalayan, with floating calipers and sintered pads. And being road-focused, these offer a sharper braking performance than the Himalayan's softer off-road focused brakes. So no turning off the rear ABS either. The brake bite is confident and the nosedive isn't as pronounced, because the suspension has lesser travel and stiffer damping, giving the Guerrilla its taut handling. And you won't really miss those upside-down forks unless you want them more for those beefy looks. The swing arm is shorter too, making the bike more flickable around switchbacks. Riding around the winding roads was a blast. These tires, despite their block pattern, offer a nice progressive lean in. It's not too sharp, but not too lazy either. It's nice and progressive, imparts a lot of confidence. Of course, with the raised foot pegs, your cornering clearance is much better, but you're not going to be scraping those foot pegs often because the tires run out of their limit a lot earlier. At higher leans, they start squirming quite a bit. But if you were to swap them with more road-focused rubber, something like the Seat Sportride, for example, I think this bike is going to be a completely different animal. You're going to have a lot more fun. So if attacking corners, riding on tarmac, that's more of your thing, I would definitely swap those tires for road rubber.
There's a sense of lightness to the way the Guerrilla handles, perfect for inspiring confidence in its target audience. The Guerrilla feels breezier than the Himalayan when tackling the city environment, and the new engine maps work well for zipping through traffic. And if you're going to use it primarily for that purpose, the 200 to 250 km of usable range isn't too bad.
Well, the stock seat, it's a bit too low for my liking, and especially around the winding roads, it wasn't really allowing me too much room to move around. So if you're the kind of guy who moves around a lot while cornering, you're probably not going to like this seat too much, especially if you're 5'8" like me or anything taller than that. There's of course the rib seat option, but it's lower still, so even that wouldn't help. So what I swapped to was the flat tracker seat that they have. That definitely allowed me more room to move around, hang off the bike with a lot more confidence, so that definitely worked for me. But the cushioning on that seat is so hard. It's so hard. I could literally feel my tailbone turning into powder. It broke my back in less than 50 kilometers.
That begs the question, can you go touring with this motorcycle?
They usually say a man's feet point in the direction where the man subconsciously wants to go. So if those block pattern tires are going to make you go off the road, or at least giving you that itch, you should be able to go off the beaten path. Of course, the ground clearance has been reduced by 61 millimeters compared to the Himalayan. The suspension travel is only 140 millimeters at the front, 150 millimeters at the rear, so that's also significantly lesser than the Himalayan. However, you can still go off the beaten path if you so wish. It shouldn't be that bad. I know, because we tried. You can also spec this motorcycle up with a bash plate if you so wish. You can also get those headlight guards, etc. All of that is a part of the accessories list. So definitely check that out.
The tires may be block patterned, but they aren't really off-road tires. They're still more road biased. Consider it a 80-20 tire. The instrumentation hooks up with Google Maps, either via the Tripper navigation module on the base model or through the TFT screen on the high variants. And I think you should be able to retrofit the latter on the base model. However, like the Himalayan, you will need to keep your phone unlocked for the Google Maps to work, which is a bit of a bummer, but the engineers say that it's more of a limitation with Google's API than RE's own app. Its 191 kilo payload, similar to the Himalayan, will still let you head to the Himalayas with your pillion and the luggage. The rack-free luggage system from Himalayan's accessory catalog should fit the Guerrilla despite its narrow rear seat.
Pillion comfort is not going to be as good as it is on the Himalayan. In fact, even the saddle comfort for the rider, for long distances, I don't think it's going to be very comfortable. Now that I've tried two different seats, I think they need to definitely introduce a cushier touring seat option if you want to take this motorcycle touring. Otherwise, if touring features big for you, then the Himalayan is still going to be the better buy. To sum it up, the Himalayan 450 is a great example of evolution if you compare it to the previous model. Similarly, the Guerrilla is a great example of platform sharing if you compare it to the Himalayan 450. Now, in Spanish, whatever little I've heard or know, Guerra means war. Guerrilla means little army. So will the Guerrilla 450 be just that, a little army in the massive Royal Enfield battalion? Or will it actually declare war on the entire segment, laid back, in-betweens, high-revving machines, all included? Or will it be a runaway success like the Hunter? Well, only time will tell. But whatever I can tell, I think it might just end up being an in-between, just the way the motorcycle itself is.